She was barefoot in the snow, wearing a torn dress and no name. He was a single dad, still grieving the woman he lost, just trying to make it through one more winter. He didn't ask who she was. She didn't ask where he was going. But the ride he gave her changed everything. What unfolded next wasn't just a story about love. It was about second chances, quiet courage, and the kind of kindness that can rebuild not just bonds, but broken hearts. The snow had started falling just after sundown, thick and relentless, blanketing the hills of northern Montana in a quiet that muffled even the crunch of old tires over gravel. Josh Walker gripped the steering wheel of his rust-red pickup truck with one hand, the other nursing a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee. His eyes, tired and weather-worn, scanned the empty road ahead. His flannel shirt was still dusted with hay from the morning's feed, and the worn boots on his feet ached with the day's labor. It had been a hard winter, and it wasn't over. In the passenger seat, a bundle of drawings from his daughter Lily lay tied with a bit of twine, her gift to him for working hard and loving good, as she'd put it that morning before school. He hadn't told her the farm's last bales of hay were gone, or that the bank had left its third notice in the mailbox. Josh didn't have the heart. Then he saw her, a figure just off the shoulder of the road, standing no swaying like a ghost, caught between choosing to vanish or be seen. Her white dress clung to her legs, soaked from the knees down. Her coat, 2 sizes too big, hung open in the wind. She was barefoot. Josh hit the brakes. The truck skidded slightly before stopping. For a moment he didn't move. He simply stared. She didn't wave, didn't walk toward the truck. She just stood there, arms around herself, her face half hidden by tangled strands of wet hair. Josh opened his door. The wind slapped his cheeks with ice. "You need a ride," he called out, his voice hoarse from disuse. She didn't answer. He tried again, softer this time. "It's not safe out here. Not in this weather." Finally she looked up, eyes so sharp and alive it startled him, not from fear, but something else. Grit. Something that had cracked, but not broken. She hesitated, then stepped forward slowly, awkwardly, her bare feet sinking into the slush. As she climbed into the passenger seat, Josh noticed the delicate lace hem of what had once been a wedding dress, torn and streaked with mud. The coat around her was fraying at the cuffs. She smelled faintly of lavender and snow. Josh started the engine again. They rode in silence for a few minutes, the heater straining to pump warmth into the cabin. "Where you headed?" he asked, not looking at her. "Somewhere warm," she replied, her voice low, steady. Josh glanced sideways. "Town's 15 miles back. You passed it." She nodded. "I wasn't headed for town." That was all she said. He didn't press. They arrived at the farmhouse just past 7. The lights glowed warmly through frosted windows, and smoke curled from the chimney, the kind of sight that would look like a postcard if you didn't know the water heater was busted and half the barn roof was caved in. As they pulled up, Lily ran out to greet her dad, bundled in a pink knit hat and snow boots. "Daddy," she shouted, then paused when she saw the woman. Josh stepped out first. "Sweetie, this is our guest for the night." The woman opened her door, moving gingerly. The snow hissed beneath her feet. Lily's eyes widened. "Why aren't you wearing shoes?" Josh tensed. The woman knelt slowly despite the cold. She smiled, soft, kind, but tired. "I forgot them," she said, simply. Lily, satisfied with the answer only a child would accept without judgment, reached for her hand. "It's okay. You can borrow Mommy's fuzzy socks." Josh felt something shift in his chest. Later that night, after a supper of leftover chicken and rice, the woman sat near the wood stove, her hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, snuggled beneath a quilt. Josh leaned against the doorframe to the kitchen, arms crossed. "You gonna tell me your name?" he asked gently. She looked up, eyes catching the flicker of the firelight. There was a pause too long for a simple question. "Rachel," she finally said. "Just Rachel." "All right, Rachel. You want to tell me why a woman in a torn wedding dress is walking barefoot through the Montana back roads in the middle of a snowstorm?" Her gaze dropped to the floor, then back up. Not defensive, not ashamed, just tired. "I was going to marry the wrong man, in the wrong life, for the wrong reason," she said. "So I ran." Josh nodded slowly. "And where were you planning to go?" "I didn't know," Rachel whispered. "I just wanted someone to see me. Not the name, not the dress. Just me." The room felt quiet, save for the soft crackle of firewood. After a moment, Josh walked over to the old storage chest by the wall, opened it, and pulled out a pair of thick wool socks, blue with tiny reindeer stitched near the cuffs. He set them beside her without a word. She stared at them, then at him. "They belonged to my wife," he said softly. "She would have offered them to you too." Rachel reached for them with both hands, held them for a moment like something precious. Then she looked up at him with tears unshed. "Thank you," she said. "For stopping. For not asking too much. For just being kind." Josh didn't answer. He just nodded quietly. And something inside him, something long buried, began to thaw. Morning came like a sigh through the frost-laced window panes, soft and colorless. Snow still fell outside, though, gentler now, like feathers shaken from the sky. The old farmhouse groaned as the pipes woke up. In the living room, the wood stove had gone cold. Josh stood in the kitchen sipping burnt coffee, his eyes fixed on the faded linoleum beneath his boots. He heard the floorboards creak behind him and didn't have to look up to know it was her. Rachel. That's what she'd said her name was last night. Just Rachel. No last name. No more details. She moved quietly, almost too quietly, like someone used to being invisible. "You sleep at all?" Josh asked without turning. "Some." Her voice was husky, either from cold or from carrying too much. She hadn't spoken yet. Josh nodded, took another sip, then reached into the cupboard and pulled down 2 mismatched mugs. "I only have instant," he said. "I've had worse," she replied, accepting the steaming cup. Her fingers were still red from the cold. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that was neither awkward nor comfortable, just cautious. From the hallway, the sound of tiny feet shuffled closer. Lily appeared, still wrapped in her blanket like a cocoon. Her hair stuck out in every direction, and one of her socks had slipped halfway off. Rachel smiled. "Morning sunshine," Josh said, kneeling to help her with the sock. "Morning, Daddy," Lily yawned. Then she blinked up at Rachel and asked, "You're still here?" Josh stiffened. Rachel hesitated, then crouched to Lily's level. "I am. But I'll be heading out soon." "Why?" Lily asked, as if that were the most ridiculous idea in the world. Josh interrupted gently. "Because she's just passing through, sweetheart." Lily looked between them, her little brows furrowing. "But I was going to show her the chickens." Rachel chuckled. "Maybe just for a little while," Josh sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "You don't have to do chores, you know." Rachel turned to him, her gaze steady. "I want to." They went outside together after breakfast. Josh, Lily, and Rachel in the old coat, and borrowed boots that were 2 sizes too big. The farm looked softer under snow, like something sleeping. The barn stood crooked, but solid, and the fence posts were laced with icicles. Rachel moved as if she had done this before. She knew how to hold a feed bucket, how to calm a jittery hen, how to close a latch without waking every bird in the barn. Josh watched her from a distance, leaning against the side of the truck. She doesn't belong here, he thought, not just because of the dress now covered under his late wife's flannel coat, or the way she avoided eye contact for too long. It was something else. Something in the way she moved with too much grace to be ordinary, but too much humility to be entitled. After they finished the morning feed, they walked back toward the house. Rachel's cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her hands trembled slightly when she returned the gloves to Josh. "You've done this before," he said, almost accusing. "Not exactly," she replied. He narrowed his eyes. "You handle yourself like someone who's used to land, not like someone who runs through snow in a wedding dress." Rachel paused. The wind caught the edge of her coat, flapping it like a flag. "I grew up somewhere. Rural. My mother insisted I learn how to handle things even if we didn't need to." "That's vague," he said, watching her carefully. She shrugged, forcing a small smile. "That's intentional." Josh didn't press further, but inside questions stacked like kindling, just waiting for the right spark. Later that afternoon, while Lily napped and Josh fixed a hinge on the pantry door, Rachel stood near the fireplace, staring at the photos on the mantel. A young woman in an old frame, Josh's wife. Auburn hair, freckled cheeks, eyes that smiled even when her lips didn't. "She was beautiful," Rachel murmured. Josh paused. His work wiped his hands and joined her. "She was stronger than she looked," he said softly. "Cancer didn't take that from her." Rachel nodded. "I'm sorry." Josh nodded back, appreciating that she didn't offer pity, just presence. Then, without thinking, he asked, "What about your family?" She looked away. "Complicated." Josh waited. When she didn't elaborate, he let it go. "For now." "Do you have a place to go?" he asked. Rachel set the photo back down gently. "I thought I did." And now she looked up at him, and for the first time he saw not just the strength, but the deep old loneliness behind it. "Now, I'm not sure." That night, after Lily had gone to bed with a kiss and a prayer, Rachel helped Josh wash dishes in the sink that leaked at the base. They stood shoulder to shoulder, hands brushing now and then, neither of them mentioning it. "You really don't have to do all this," Josh said. Rachel looked up at him. "Maybe I need to." Josh wanted to ask her what she meant, wanted to ask her why she was really here, why she ran, who she had been before the snow. But instead he just nodded. When she turned to leave the kitchen, he called softly, "Rachel." She stopped. "You don't have to tell me everything he said, but if you ever want to, I'll listen." Rachel turned her head. The firelight caught her face, half shadow, half grace. "I know," she said. And then she was gone up the stairs. But Josh stood there for a long time, after wondering why his heart felt just a little less heavy than the day before. The next morning, Rachel awoke to the sound of laughter echoing from downstairs, the high bell-like sound of Lily, and the warm rumble of Josh, answering her like two melodies made to be played together. For a long moment, Rachel lay still beneath the old quilt, blinking up at the water-stained ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar. Safe. It was a dangerous feeling. She sat up slowly, wincing as her bare feet hit the cold wood floor. The borrowed socks had been kicked off in the night, and now lay in a crumpled heap beside the bed. She stared at them. Thick wool hand-stitched, faint scent of lavender and cedar. They had once belonged to Josh's late wife. She knew that, and yet for the first time in months, her body had allowed itself to rest. Had trusted. That scared her more than the snow. She dressed quietly in the same clothes as yesterday, a flannel shirt over a worn thermal top, jeans a bit too tight at the knees. Josh had loaned them to her without a word, as if giving someone clothes in the dead of winter were as natural as breathing. In the kitchen, Lily was trying to butter toast, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Josh stood by the stove, flipping scrambled eggs with one hand and sipping coffee with the other. He looked up as Rachel entered and gave a small nod. "Mornin'," he said. Rachel smiled faintly. "Mornin'." "You hungry? I could eat." He pointed to a stool at the kitchen island. "Sit." Lily made toast. Lily beamed, holding up 2 unevenly browned slices. "One's for you. I didn't even drop it this time." Rachel laughed, really laughed, and took the toast with both hands. A masterpiece. They ate together quietly, as if they'd done it for years instead of days. Afterward, Josh asked her to help in the shed, something about a broken latch and a hayloft that had given up during the last storm. Rachel followed him out, tugging the borrowed coat closer around her. As they walked, she glanced toward the road, the one she had been walking the night he found her. It looked different in daylight, less like an escape, more like a border. She wasn't sure she wanted to cross again. The shed was cold and smelled of oil and cedar. Josh handed her a pair of gloves and a wrench, then climbed the ladder to show her the broken beam. She followed, careful on the rungs. As they worked side by side, Rachel found herself speaking without thinking. "My mother used to keep bees." Josh looked up. "Yeah," she said, "if you want to know the truth about someone, watch how they treat something that can sting and still give you honey." Josh chuckled softly. "That's either wise or terrifying. Can't decide." Rachel smiled. "Probably both." A pause followed, not awkward but charged. Josh's hand stilled on the beam. "Your mom, is she still around?" Rachel's smile faded. "No, not for a long time." Josh nodded slowly. "Sorry. She taught me how to fix things. Said no daughter of hers was going to be useless just because she wore dresses." Josh glanced at her, then back to his work. "She sounds like a woman I'd have liked. She'd have liked you," Rachel said before she could stop herself. Her voice caught. Josh looked over at her, and for a moment their eyes met with no pretense between them. Only weight, memory, and something that felt dangerously close to longing. That afternoon, while Josh was tending to the fence line, Rachel stayed back with Lily to help with her schoolwork. The little girl sprawled across the rug in front of the fireplace, crayons scattered everywhere. "Draw me," Rachel said, smiling. Lily tilted her head. "Okay, but you have to sit still like a statue." Rachel obeyed, sitting cross-legged, hands in her lap. Lily's tongue stuck out in concentration again. After several minutes of intense focus, she held up the drawing proudly. "This is you." Rachel took it gently. In Lily's world, she was a girl with a yellow sun behind her long red hair and a big heart on her shirt. It undid her. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful," Lily said plainly, then went back to coloring the grass blue. "You look like someone who belongs here." Rachel blinked rapidly, trying to hide the tears. "I don't," she said softly. "You do, now," Lily replied without looking up, and for a terrifying moment Rachel wanted that to be true. That night, Josh found her sitting on the porch steps after dinner, wrapped in an old blanket, the stars glinting cold above her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her, the snow creaking beneath his boots. She broke the silence. "I should leave soon." Josh sat down beside her. "Where would you go? I don't know," she said truthfully. He nodded. "You running from something, Rachel." She didn't answer right away. Her breath came out in puffs of fog. "I was supposed to marry a man who saw me as a prize, not a person. I walked away before I became a story I didn't believe in." Josh didn't flinch. "What kind of story do you believe in?" Rachel turned her head, looked him in the eye. "Kindness," she said. "Second chances. People who fix things, not because they broke them, but because they care." Josh leaned back on his elbows, looking up at the stars. "Sounds like a hell of a story." Rachel smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She stood slowly and handed him something wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, her torn wedding shoes. "I don't need these anymore," she said. Josh looked down at the delicate heels inside, mud-caked, stained, but still strangely beautiful. "You sure?" he asked. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "They belong to someone I'm not anymore." He accepted the bag, and with it a piece of her she no longer needed. As she walked back inside, Josh looked down at the shoes and whispered, "Good riddance." But deep inside he wondered what kind of woman left behind a life of privilege, and what she might be searching for now. Josh had never been good at small talk. He wasn't raised that way. His father believed in work, his mother in silence, and his wife, well, she had been the only one who ever taught him the language of quiet kindness. Since she passed, he spoke less and thought more. But lately, with Rachel around, thoughts were starting to turn to words again, hesitant, unpolished, but real. Still the feeling gnawed at him. He couldn't quite name it. Maybe it was doubt. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe it was that Rachel, with her torn past, and that aching gentleness in her voice, was starting to matter more than he knew what to do with. The first snowmelt came early that week. The roof creaked with the weight of thawing ice, and puddles pooled along the gravel driveway, like little mirrors reflecting a world coming back to life. Josh stood in the barn that afternoon, mending a split fence post. Rachel had gone into town with Lily for groceries, her idea. She said she needed to see the world again, even if it was just the aisle of a dusty feed store. He should have gone with them. That's what a man who wasn't afraid would have done. Instead, he stayed back and picked a fight with a hammer. Each strike was a sentence he didn't know how to say. What if she's only here until the snow clears? What if Lily grows attached, and then she disappears like a summer storm? What if I do? By the time Rachel returned, Lily was chattering like a bird. She had a new coloring book, a peppermint stick in her pocket, and the kind of joy that made everything else blur into the background. Rachel handed Josh a receipt and a bag of dog food. "I hope you don't mind," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I found a discount bin at the market." "I don't mind," he said. "I just didn't expect." He stopped himself. What Josh hesitated, the fence of his thoughts, half-built and dangerously sharp. "You didn't have to do all this," he finally said. "You're not obligated." Rachel tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "Do I look like someone who does things out of obligation?" "No," he admitted. "But people usually want something." She didn't get angry. She didn't flinch. She just stepped closer, her voice steady. "I did want something," she said. "Somewhere to breathe. Somewhere to remember who I was before I became who they wanted." Josh swallowed hard. The air between them tightened, like the moment before a branch breaks under snow. "I'm not asking for anything," Rachel said. "But I'm also not pretending I'm not here." Then she turned, gently took Lily's hand, and disappeared into the kitchen. Josh stood there for a long time, heart loud in the quiet. That night, sleep didn't come easy. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the ticking of the old clock slicing the dark into smaller and smaller pieces. Somewhere down the hall, Rachel's floorboards creaked. She was still awake, too. He thought about the first time he'd held Lily as a baby, her breath warm against his chest, and how he had whispered to his sleeping wife, "I'll never let her hurt." He had meant it. But the world didn't make promises easy to keep. And now, here was this woman, a stranger, really walking into their lives with nothing but secrets and borrowed socks, and somehow making the place feel more like home than it had in years. Josh got up, pulled on his boots, and stepped out onto the porch. The air was crisp again, the thaw slowing. Overhead, stars hung like scattered nails across the velvet sky. He leaned against the post and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. And then, a soft voice behind him. "Can't sleep?" He turned. Rachel stood in the doorway, wrapped in a quilt, her face half lit by the porch light. He shook his head. "Too much on my mind." She joined him, standing a few feet away. "Me too," she said. A beat passed. Then another. Josh looked at her. You ever gonna tell me where you're from? Rachel stared out into the darkness. Does it matter? She asked. He thought for a moment. Only if you think I can't handle the answer. She smiled, the first real one of the day. You're not the one I'm worried about. They sat on the steps together, wrapped in silence and wool. Josh glanced sideways. What are you afraid of? Rachel hesitated. That if I stay, you'll expect more from me than I can give. Josh took that in, then spoke slowly. I'm not afraid of people leaving, he said. I'm afraid of hoping they'll stay. Rachel looked down, her fingers tightening around the edge of the quilt. That's the thing about hope, she whispered. It's the bravest thing we do. The next morning, Josh found an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a simple note in Rachel's handwriting. I'm not running today, but I still don't know if I can stay forever. Thank you for the socks. Josh folded the note, placed it in his back pocket, and walked outside. Lily was already feeding the chickens. The snow had hardened overnight, but the sun was rising through the mist like something brand new. Josh smiled to himself, then reached down and picked up a hammer. If there was one thing he knew how to do, it was fix what was broken, one nail one day at a time. The drawer didn't mean to open. It was old, warped with time, and winter stuck most days, unless tugged with just the right pressure and a little muttered encouragement. But that morning, Lily had been on the hunt for markers, the good ones, not the dried-up kind, and had yanked the drawer open with the uninhibited force only a determined child can summon. And there it was. A notebook. Leather-bound, frayed at the corners, with a loop still clinging to a broken pencil stub. Dust clung to it like memory. Daddy, Lily called. Can I use this book? The paper feels fancy. Josh stepped into the room, wiping his hands on an old dish towel. His gaze landed on the notebook, and he froze. No, he said more sharply than intended. Then softer. No, sweetheart. That's not for coloring. Lily looked up, puzzled. Whose is it? Josh stepped forward slowly, reverently, as if approaching a relic. It was your mom's. Rachel, who had been sweeping near the back porch, paused at the threshold, her hand stilled on the broom. She watched silently as Josh took the notebook and turned it over in his hands, his thumb brushing a corner like it might disappear. I didn't know she kept one, he murmured. He sat at the kitchen table and opened it carefully. The first pages were grocery lists, sketches of chicken coop renovations, clippings of Lily's first drawings. Then came the entries, small, neat, cursive, the kind that belonged to someone who thought before speaking and still worried it might be too much. Rachel hovered quietly behind him, not intruding, just present. Josh read aloud. March 15th. Josh fixed the fence today. Didn't ask for help, just did it like always. I made stew and forgot the salt. He didn't say a word, just smiled and went back for seconds. That man loves quiet the way some people love applause. He swallowed, turned the page. May 3. I'm tired tonight. The medicine isn't working like before. I told Josh it was just allergies. He nodded, but his hands trembled when he did the dishes. He knows, but he won't say it. That's his way of loving me, by pretending I'm still strong. Josh's hand faltered. Rachel gently stepped closer, resting one hand on the chair behind him. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. He kept reading. June 7th. I don't know how much longer I'll be here. If someone finds this, and if they're kind, I hope they know Josh isn't just good. He's rare. He'll pretend he doesn't need anyone. He'll patch fences with bleeding hands and call it nothing. But he'll need someone someday. Someone who sees him when he thinks he's invisible. Someone who stays. If you're her, please stay. The words hung in the air like smoke. Josh closed the notebook gently, then stood without looking at anyone. He left the room with careful steps. Lily reached for Rachel's hand. Why is Daddy sad? Rachel knelt beside her, because sometimes, she said softly, love doesn't end when someone is gone. It just waits. Josh sat on the back steps, eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun struggled behind clouds. The diary rested beside him like a weight. Rachel approached quietly, sat down beside him, mirroring his posture. I didn't mean to read it, she said. I know. She was. Rachel's voice trailed off. She was everything Josh finished for her. Silence. Then after a long while he spoke again. She wanted someone to stay. But not just anyone. Someone who didn't flinch when the wind blew sideways. Rachel looked at him, eyes searching. And if I flinched, Josh didn't turn, but his voice softened. Then I'll wait. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Rachel returned to the kitchen. She stood before the drawer for a long time, before slowly, deliberately placing something inside. A small, folded note. Inside her handwriting, simple and sure. I don't know if I'm the one she meant, but I see him. And I'm not walking away today. The next morning Josh found it. He read it twice, maybe 3 times, then tucked it back inside the diary and closed the drawer. Outside, Rachel was in the garden, coaxing frostbitten stems into life. Josh stepped out, tools in hand. You're early, he said. She didn't look up. I had a feeling these carrots needed hope before sunlight. He chuckled. That a professional opinion better, she said. It's a stubborn one. He leaned on the fence post, watched her hands work, the soil, watched the wind catch the edges of her hair. Then he said almost too quietly, you can stay, as long as you need. Or longer. Rachel looked up, something in her eyes, flickering disbelief, gratitude, maybe both. Thank you, she whispered. But in her heart she said something more. I needed this home before I even knew it existed. It began with a truck. Not Josh's. This one was sleek black, polished like it had never tasted dirt, its tires too clean for Montana roads. It pulled into the driveway just before noon, humming like something out of a different life. Josh was on the ladder fixing the gutter when he saw it. He narrowed his eyes against the sun, his hand stilling mid-motion. The emblem on the grill gleamed like a badge. Out-of-state plates, big city tires. Trouble. He climbed down, slowly. Rachel stepped out onto the porch with Lily holding a basket of folded laundry. She froze when she saw the vehicle. Her hand dropped to the railing, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. The truck door opened, and a man in a tailored wool coat stepped out. Dark hair, trimmed beard, expensive shoes. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. Evan. Josh's stomach dropped. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Rachel. You've made quite a hobby of disappearing. Lily looked up, confused. Who's that? Miss Rachel. Rachel knelt beside her, her voice trembling but steady. Sweetheart, can you go inside and draw something for me? Use all the colors. I'll be right there. Lily hesitated, glanced at Josh, then obeyed. Rachel straightened and faced the man. What are you doing here? I think... You know, Evan said. Your father's in a panic. The wedding was days ago. The press is spinning everything from a mental breakdown to an abduction. Your front page news. Josh stepped forward, jaw tight. She's not a headline. Evan glanced at him, mildly amused. And you must be the hero in flannel. Josh didn't flinch. Get to the point. Evan turned back to Rachel. I'm here to bring you home. She laughed. A soft, humorless thing. Home. You mean the glass prison built on nameplates and legacy? Evan's smile thinned. We all have roles to play, Rachel. You're not exempt. I already gave up that role. You don't get to walk away from Weston Holdings like it's some retail gig. You're the only heir now. The board won't sit idle forever. Josh stared at Rachel. Weston. Rachel closed her eyes. I didn't want this here, she whispered. Not like this. Evan pulled out a phone and held up the screen. Her face, headlines, runaway heiress sparks media frenzy after wedding, walkout. Josh's heart thudded like a hammer. She turned to him, pleading. I wanted you to know me, not the version they sell. Just Rachel, the one who liked dirt under her nails, the one who sleeps better in borrowed socks than in a penthouse. He said nothing. I never meant to lie. I needed to feel real again. Josh stepped back slightly, his hands curling into fists at his sides. So what was this vacation from your life? Rachel flinched. No, she said. It was the first time I ever lived it. That night, the farmhouse felt colder. Lily asked where Rachel was. Josh said she needed some air, but she wasn't coming back inside. Rachel sat on the edge of the truck bed, looking out across the field. The moonlight painted everything in silver and silence. The air smelled like pine and heartbreak. Josh finally came out his footsteps, slow on the porch steps. She's asleep, he said quietly. Rachel nodded. I wasn't running from money, Josh, she said. I was running from being invisible in a room full of cameras. I thought if I could be somewhere no one knew my name. Maybe I could remember who I was before they decided for me. He crossed his arms. And who are you? She turned to him, eyes raw and honest. I don't know yet. But when I'm with Lily, when I see you fix things with your hands and never complain, I feel closer to finding out. Josh looked away, jaw clenched. I buried my wife on this land, he said. I buried hope with her. Rachel's voice cracked. I wasn't trying to replace her. I know, he paused. But my daughter thinks you hung the moon, and you made this house feel like something other than grief. I don't know how to hold that without breaking. Rachel stood slowly. You don't have to hold it all alone. He looked at her then for the first time, not as the woman in the snow or the heiress on the headlines, but as someone aching to belong. Then he said almost too quietly, Are you leaving? She hesitated. If I stay now, it feels like stealing something. Josh shook his head. No, he said. Staying would be the bravest thing you've done. By morning Rachel was gone. No note, no farewell. Just a half-washed coffee mug by the sink, a folded flannel shirt on the chair, and the scent of lavender still clinging to the air. Josh stared at the empty doorway for a long time. Then he went outside, picked up his hammer, and began to mend the fence again, not because it needed fixing, but because his hands didn't know how else to say they missed her. In small towns, news travels faster than wind. By Tuesday morning, everyone from the postmaster to the pastor's wife knew that the quiet woman who'd been staying at the Walker farm wasn't some lost traveler or cousin from out of state. She was Rachel Weston, heiress to a billion-dollar real estate empire, the infamous runaway bride, whose name had flooded national headlines just days earlier. Josh first heard it at the feed store. He was loading seed into the back of his pickup when Tom Granger, a farmer with too much time and too little subtlety, leaned on the tailgate and whistled. Didn't figure you the type to entertain royalty, Josh, he said, grinning. Josh glanced up, cautious. What are you talking about? Tom pulled out his phone, showed him a photo, grainy, zoomed in, but unmistakable. Rachel in flannel and boots standing outside the barn. The Walker barn. Josh's jaw tightened. They're saying she's been hiding out here, Tom said. Reporters are poking around in Kalispell already. Town's about to get famous. Josh didn't answer, just slammed the tailgate shut and drove off without another word. He didn't stop shaking until he was halfway home. At the general store, Mrs. Hartwell told Lily she couldn't take candy from the free bowl unless her fancied lady friend paid for it. At the gas station, someone had scribbled Billionaire Barbie on the window beside the ice machine. At church, Josh noticed people whispering behind hymnals, glancing at the pew that had sat empty since Sunday. Rachel was gone, but her shadow hadn't left. It clung to the farm, to Lily's questions, to the way Josh walked more stiffly now, as if trying not to feel too much. That night, Lily crawled onto the porch swing where Josh sat, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold. "Is she coming back?" Lily asked. Josh hesitated. "I don't know. Did she do something bad?" Josh turned to his daughter. "No, baby. She didn't." "Then why is everyone mad?" He sighed, pulling her close. "Because sometimes people get scared when they see someone step out of the life they expect them to live." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I liked her better than most people anyway." Josh chuckled, his throat tight. "Me too." 2 days later, Josh was approached by Mayor Halford in the diner parking lot. The man's suit was too tight for Montana winters, and his handshake always felt like a transaction. "We're hosting a town meeting," the mayor said. "People are uneasy. We'd appreciate it if you came down." "Maybe." Clarified things. Clarified what? Well, there's talk. The press thinks she might still be here. And if the walkers are sheltering fugitives or attracting national attention, we need transparency. Josh folded his arms. "She's not a fugitive. She's a person. One who didn't deserve what they did to her." The mayor shifted uncomfortably. "That may be true, but public opinion matters." Josh didn't reply. He just walked back into the diner, sat at his usual booth, and ordered his usual black coffee. But the waitress who used to smile now avoided his table entirely. That evening, as the wind howled and the temperature dropped again, Josh pulled open the barn doors and stood in the middle of the dusty space. Memories clung to the rafters, laughter, conversations, the sound of Rachel humming softly while brushing hay off her jeans. He closed his eyes. Then he did something unexpected. He picked up a hammer. Again. Started fixing the loose board Rachel had tripped on during her second morning there. Not because it needed fixing, but because it reminded him of her. The town meeting was held at the community hall, a building that smelled of old wood, coffee, and politics. Josh hadn't planned on speaking. He didn't much care for crowds. But when Tom Granger stood up and started talking about lies and people who think they can buy their way into trust, Josh rose from his seat before he even realized he'd done it. The room went quiet. Josh cleared his throat. "A lot of you know me. You knew my wife. You know what I lost." Heads nodded. A few looked down. "You also know I don't bring strangers around. I keep to myself, raise my daughter, work my land." He paused. Let the weight of his words settle. "Rachel Weston came to my home barefoot in a snowstorm, not because she wanted attention or money or to play anyone. She came because she was trying to remember what it felt like to be human." Murmurs swept through the crowd. "She helped my daughter sleep better. She mended fences. She cooked. She read stories." She laughed again, and for the first time in 3 years so did I. He looked directly at Tom, then at the mayor, then back at everyone. If this town can't open its heart to someone who just wanted to feel safe for a while, then maybe it's not the place I thought it was. He stepped back. No applause, just silence. But sometimes that was louder. Rachel watched all of it on a grainy live stream from a motel room 2 counties over. She'd found it by accident, a local blog broadcasting the town meeting on Facebook. She hadn't planned to watch, but something had made her click. When Josh stood up to speak, her hand trembled against the phone screen. She saw it in his eyes. The hurt. The loyalty. The way he chose to protect her, even now. When the video ended, she sat still for a long time. Then she reached for her coat and started the engine. The storm rolled in without ceremony. There were no warning sirens, no radio advisories. Just the sudden shift in air, heavy and metallic, and the kind of silence that preceded something breaking. Josh had seen it before. He was in the yard when the wind started to howl strong enough to slap the breath from his chest. He looked up just in time to see clouds swelling like bruises across the afternoon sky. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many minutes. He ran to the barn. Inside, the animals were restless. The horses paced, the goats bleated, the chickens fluttered in their coops. But Josh didn't see any of it. He saw the crack that had been there all winter, the one he kept telling himself could wait. A splintered beam sagged beneath the weight of snow and ice that had built steadily on the roof, unchecked and unforgiving. Josh ran for the ladder. Too late. The groan came first, a low, trembling sound that echoed in his ribs. Then the crash. The roof gave way like a breath being punched from the world, sending beams, shingles, and decades of work tumbling into chaos. Hay and dust erupted in a cloud of choking debris. Josh dove, arms shielding his head. Then stillness. He didn't know how long he lay there before he realized he was alive. Bruised, breathless, but alive. The west wall had collapsed partially, letting in snow like a slow, cold flood. The goats huddled near a trough, wide-eyed. One of the horses had kicked through its stall. Josh coughed, sat up, and then headlights. A truck screeched to a stop outside. A door slammed. Josh, he blinked, couldn't trust his ears. Or maybe he was just hallucinating because that voice. Josh, Rachel. She appeared in the haze of snow and ruin hair whipping across her face, boots crunching through splinters. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Oh my God. Are you hurt?" He stared up at her, blinking. "You came back." Rachel laughed through her panic. "Of course I did." "What are you? Are you bleeding?" "I'm fine," he said, but winced as he moved. "Okay, maybe not entirely fine." She touched his temple gently, where blood trickled down from a shallow cut. Then her hands moved to his ribs, his arms checking for breaks. "How did you know?" he asked. "I was halfway back to the city when I saw the clouds," she said. "I know what a northern blizzard looks like, and I knew you wouldn't leave this barn. Not unless someone made you." Josh laughed, short, dry, amazed. "And here you are, making me." Rachel helped him to his feet. Together they herded the animals out into the smaller equipment shed, which was cramped but dry and sturdy. The snow kept falling. But inside that little structure, huddled among blankets, feed sacks and 2 frightened goats. Rachel bandaged Josh's arm while Lily curled beside him. She had arrived minutes after Rachel. "Mommy's blanket flew off the porch," she said breathlessly. "I chased it and saw the barn fall. Then Miss Rachel's truck came." Josh looked at Rachel. "You came back. Just in time." Rachel met his eyes. "I didn't come back because of the storm, Josh. I came back because I realized the worst thing wasn't people knowing who I am. The worst thing would be never seeing you again." That night, they stayed in the shed. Rachel curled between Lily and Josh, her fingers laced with his beneath a shared blanket. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, there was only breath and heartbeat and warmth. "I don't care if the town doesn't approve," Josh murmured. "I don't either," she whispered back. Not anymore. The next morning the storm had passed. The sun rose timidly through the mist, turning the snow into glitter. The barn was a wreck, but the animals were safe. The roof could be rebuilt, and somehow Josh's heart no longer felt like something buried in frozen ground. Rachel stood beside him, boots and snow eyes fixed on the ruined barn. "We'll rebuild," she said simply. Josh nodded. Together she turned to and offered the smallest, bravest smile. Yes, together. And for the first time since his wife died, Josh believed it. Rebuilding the barn became more than a chore. It became a rhythm, a quiet declaration that life would not be dictated by collapse, but by what one did next. Josh worked with his hands the way some people prayed, steady, reverent, without complaint. and Rachel worked beside him, learning the pace of lumber and nails, her city-soft fingers slowly callousing with each strike of the hammer. Each day began with coffee and ended with sore backs and small laughter. Each night they returned to the porch swing where silence no longer held grief, but promise. It was during one of those dusks, a gold-laced sky over fresh snowfall, that Rachel took a breath and said, "I want to do something." Josh glanced sideways, like what she looked down at her hands. Build more than a barn. He waited. Rachel turned to him, voice slow, deliberate. "When I ran from my wedding, I didn't just run from a man or a life I didn't choose. I ran from everything the Weston name stood for, deals, buildings, empires, that meant nothing to people like the ones in this town." Josh nodded. He didn't need a speech. "I want to use it differently," she continued. "Use my name, my inheritance, to build something real, here, in this community, on this land, if you'll let me." He raised an eyebrow. "What exactly are you thinking?" "A foundation," she said. "A space where single parents, farmers, veterans, anyone who's lost their footing can come and reset their lives. Training, support, childcare, resources." Josh didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "You sure this isn't guilt talking?" She looked at him fiercely. "No, it's gratitude. The town wasn't ready for it. At first, the idea of Rachel Weston buying land, applying for permits, and making phone calls to state departments sent the local rumor mill into overdrive. She's building condos. She's trying to buy out the county. She's here to make a name off our backs. But then she held a community meeting. She stood without makeup in worn jeans and work boots and told them the truth. "I'm not here to erase your land. I'm here because your land saved me. Because a man with calloused hands and a little girl with a candy-sticky smile gave me back my name, not Weston, but Rachel." She paused. "Let them see her. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for partnership." Josh stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the crowd, and then watching her. And for the first time he saw them shift from suspicion to curiosity. And then slowly to something close to belief. A month later, the first check arrived from a Weston trust fund Rachel had quietly untied from her father's legal grip. They began building a new structure beside the barn, modest, modern, warm with wood and natural light. It would become the Hearth House, part day, center, part, skill workshop, part community kitchen, a place where no one had to knock twice. Josh didn't want his name on the wall. Rachel disagreed, so they compromised. On the cornerstone, etched into cedar, were 5 words, built by hands and names. Lily painted a mural on the inside, bright swirls of color animals with oversized eyes, and in one corner, a little girl in pink rain boots, holding hands with a woman in flannel and a man with a beard and a hammer. "I call it our family," she said proudly. Rachel choked back tears. Josh kissed Lily's forehead and said, "It's perfect." That night, they sat on the porch swing again, watching the lanterns glow from the new center warm like fireflies. Josh leaned back, arms stretched, eyes half closed. "So, you're a builder now," Rachel smiled. "Told you I wasn't useless just because I wore dresses." He chuckled. "You've always been more than what you wore." A pause. Then she said, "I never thought I'd want roots again." Josh turned to her, his voice low. And now Rachel laced her fingers with his. "Now I think I'd like to grow old watching this place fall apart just so we can keep fixing it." Josh grinned. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." They laughed. Not like people escaping the past, but like people living a future. Together, and somewhere deep inside in a drawer in the hallway, the old diary of Josh's late wife lay quietly holding the words, "If someone makes him laugh again, give her my socks, and my seat at the table. That seat was now filled, and the table had grown longer. Spring arrived in quiet degrees. It didn't burst in with flowers or dramatic skies. It crept through the thawing soil in the soft drip of snowmelt from the barn's new roof, in the hesitant green of willow buds along the fence line. Rachel stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching Lily chase a chicken with more optimism than strategy. Josh leaned beside her, sipping his coffee, wearing the same threadbare flannel she'd secretly stolen twice for herself. "You ever think this is what your wedding would look like?" he asked, a teasing glint in his eye. She smiled. "Not once." Disappointed, Rachel shook her head slowly. "No, I think I just got tired of planning a wedding and forgot to ask myself if I was planning the right life." Josh set his mug down. "You want to get married?" Rachel turned toward him. "To you," he raised a brow. "Is there someone else I should be worried about?" She laughed, and it reached her eyes, that rare, full kind of laugh that only happened in places where walls no longer needed guarding. "Yes," she said. "Yes. I want to marry you." They didn't send invitations. There were no monogrammed napkins, no gold foil save the dates. Just a simple notice tacked on the church bulletin board and passed around in Sunday conversations this Saturday, just after sundown. Walker Farm. Come hungry, come honest. People came, more than either of them expected. The barn wasn't finished, not fully, but it stood proud, its beams warm with new wood and strings of yellow lights borrowed from 3 different families. Someone brought folding chairs. Someone else smoked brisket in a barrel drum. The women from the quilting circle stitched together a cloth for the altar, each square, a different memory from the town, a patch of plaid from Josh's wedding shirt, a swatch of flannel from Rachel's borrowed coat, a child's drawing of a goat with glitter on its horns. Rachel didn't wear white. She wore pale blue, soft flowing, and simple a dress she'd found in the back of a second-hand shop in Kalispell. She wore her hair down, loose waves, framing a face no longer hiding. And on her feet, the borrowed wool socks, carefully stitched and washed with tiny embroidered initials, still faded on the cuffs. K.W. Josh wore a clean shirt, the sleeves still rolled. He didn't shave the scruff or change the boots. He stood waiting at the altar with Lily beside him, holding a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked herself. As Rachel walked toward them, Lily leaned up and whispered, "You look like you belong here." Rachel looked down at her. "I think I always did. The ceremony was short, the vows even shorter." Josh took Rachel's hands and said simply, "I didn't know I could love again. But then you stayed." Rachel answered, "I didn't come here to fall in love. I came here to stop falling apart. And somehow, you taught me both can happen at the same time." The officiant didn't ask for rings. They hadn't planned any. But Lily reached into her coat pocket and pulled out 2 simple leather bands, braided from scraps of old reins Josh had left in the barn. "I made these," she said, proud. "They're not shiny, but they're strong." Josh's voice caught. "That's all we need." Afterward, they danced under the stars. Not a waltz or a choreographed number. Just Rachel, with her forehead pressed to Josh's chest, swaying gently, while Lily spun barefoot in circles nearby. People stayed late drinking hot cider and telling old stories. Laughter rose into the dark like lanterns, and the snow, what little remained, melted from the warmth of too many feet, moving in rhythm with joy. No press, no tabloids, just neighbors. Family. Rachel caught herself thinking, this isn't the life I was born into. But it's the one I was made for. As the night faded, Josh and Rachel sat on the back steps of the house, shoulders touching Lily asleep inside with a dog curled at her feet. Rachel looked out across the land, lit only by moonlight and the last glow from the hearth house. "Do you think she would have approved?" she asked softly. Josh didn't need to ask who she was. She left her socks, didn't she?" Rachel smiled. "I wore them today. Thought she wouldn't mind." Josh took her hand. "She gave them to you." In her way. They sat in silence, watching the wind ripple through the grass that had begun to grow again. "You know what's strange," Rachel whispered. "I used to think weddings were about the perfect day. Now I think they're about choosing who you want next to you when things aren't." Josh nodded. "And I choose you," she added, her voice low certain. "I choose you too," he said. "Every storm, every sunrise, somewhere in the distance an owl called, a window creaked, a branch swayed. But on the steps of that little farmhouse rebuilt not just with nails, but with the grit of second chances, two people sat, tired but whole, quiet but complete. And for once there was nothing left to run from, only something worth walking toward. Together, years passed, the way seasons do in the mountains, not in grand gestures, but in small signs. Lily's legs grew longer. The barn aged more gracefully this time, and Rachel learned how to fix a loose hinge with one hand while holding a pie in the other. Life didn't become perfect. It just became theirs. The Hearth House blossomed into more than anyone imagined. What began as a local support center slowly became a sanctuary for people who, like Rachel once had, were trying to remember who they were without the labels. Young parents, lost veterans, older widows looking for a second home. The town, at first skeptical, had grown into it, into her. Rachel never asked them to forget who she'd been, the heiress, the runaway bride. She simply showed up each day in boots and flannel sleeves rolled, building something that asked nothing more than, "Are you tired? Come rest." Josh, meanwhile, had become the kind of man who could laugh without guilt and hope without flinching. The man who once hammered nails into silence now taught teenage boys how to mend fences and how to listen when someone said they weren't okay. And Lily had grown into the heart of it all, still wild-haired and curious, still painting goats with glitter when no one was looking, but now also fluent in kindness. The kind passed down, not in blood, but in warmth, in watching adults choose each other, choose her, choose every ordinary day with uncommon love. It was a Thursday when the knock came. Josh was cleaning out the shed. Rachel was baking cornbread for the town potluck. Lily was upstairs playing music too loudly. Rachel opened the door. A woman stood there soaked from a spring rain hair, tangled holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 4. Her eyes were red. Her suitcase was fraying. "I heard this was the place," she said quietly. "Where you go if you don't have a place?" Rachel nodded. "It is." The woman hesitated. "I don't have money. Just a name I don't want to carry, and a kid who needs me to be better than I've been." Rachel opened the screen door. "Then you're home." That night, Josh sat on the porch again, the same porch where he'd once watched a barefoot girl in a torn dress walk into his life without asking permission. The porch light glowed softly, casting an amber circle onto the steps. Rachel joined him, 2 mugs in hand. "She's settling in," she said, passing him one. "The boys already fed the chickens, named one after a transformer." Josh chuckled. "She's not the first." Rachel glanced toward the house. Laughter drifted from inside, not loud, not forced. "Just true. I used to think light meant a chandelier," she said. "Something grand, sparkling, untouchable." Josh sipped his coffee. "And now I think it means leaving the porch light on just in case someone out there's cold and needs to believe someone's waiting." He looked at her, really looked, and said, "That's what you are." Rachel blinked. "What?" "You're the light I left on and didn't even know it." Later that week, Lily found an old shoebox under her bed, filled with memories, dried leaves from walks, receipts from diners, a crumpled map with a circle drawn around the Walker farm in shaky ink. She brought it to Rachel. "What do I do with this?" Rachel smiled. "That's up to you." Lily thought for a moment. Then she carried it down to the hothouse and placed it on the New Beginnings shelf beside a journal from a teenager who'd left foster care, and a Bible missing half its cover from a woman who'd escaped abuse. And on the box, she taped a note. "This is the place where lost things learn how to grow." On their 10th anniversary, Josh and Rachel didn't host a party. They just invited a few neighbors for soup, played old records on the porch, and danced barefoot under string lights, while Lily rolled her eyes and grinned from the swing. Rachel wore the same socks. Josh wore the same eyes, softer now, not because the world hurt less, but because he no longer carried it alone. And when people asked what changed everything, how a man who lost his world and a woman who walked away from hers found something whole in the middle of nowhere, they never had an easy answer. Because love didn't come with headlines. It came with a quiet knock on a snowy night, with socks shared across grief, with the courage to stay. The barn still creaked. The porch still sagged. But the light stayed on. And sometimes just before bed, when the stars hung low and the wind whispered across the fields, Josh would step outside, look into the dark, and murmur, "If someone's out there looking for a way back, I hope they know. They're already home. Where are you watching from? We'd love to know whether you're listening from a quiet farm, a busy city, or somewhere in between. Your presence here means the world to us." If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to Soul Moment Story, where kindness, love, and second chances always have a place. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until the next story, take care of yourself and never stop believing in gentle miracles.